Hello, and welcome to another episode of Chats with Chelsea. You have joined us for our Motherhood series, and I'm so excited for today's guest. She is an author, a business owner, mom of five, former corporate exec of 20 years. Now she's a purpose coach. And so I am so excited to have Najah Drakes here on Chats with Chelsea. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Chelsi, for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, let's dive in because you are a woman on a mission, on a purpose. You know your purpose. You've used data to help you navigate to your purpose even after 20 years in corporate America. Tell us, as we're talking about motherhood in this series, you are a mom of five boys. Tell us about your five boys.
Wow. They are as different as night is from day. They all have their own unique quirks and personality, and it has been a journey for me, an exciting journey, if you will, getting to know each one of them as individuals and mothering them according to their individual needs and passions and talents and experiences. So they range in age between 13 and 20.
Okay.
I have a bonus son who's 20 years old, and then a 19-year old. I have twins that just turned 17, well, are about to turn 17 next week. And I've got a 13-year old, just turned 13 last week. So they are active and, like I said, as different as night and day, but they keep our house exciting.
And tell us, you are a caregiver to a child with special needs.
I am. I don't know if I would say a caregiver per se. He is quite independent at this point, being 17, but he does have some uniqueness to him that makes mothering him have to be tailored, as I found that I had to do with all of my kids. So, yes, I do have kids, a child that needs some special tailoring, and but he's out here thriving.
Well, I love to hear that. And I like the way you framed it. Every part of this series is hearing the different perspectives of motherhood and how mothers address their journey and how they are embracing their journey. And so I like the verbiage of, his uniqueness, and how he's thriving, which I think is so important, especially not only for parents who may have a child with special needs, but just in general for mothers to be reminded of whether it's one, two, three, four, or five,
Yes.
there is uniqueness in being able to pour into each of them. So tell us, how have you been able to, what was that journey like of learning? You share now with great confidence that each of them and their uniqueness, but what was that journey like of understanding each of them, learning, what their purposes was and how you as a mother, your role to nurture that?
Wow, that is such a great loaded question. um, let's see. Yes, it was indeed a journey. And I think for me, I kind of had to approach parenting them with a sense of knowing that I didn't know and that
Mm.
there was exploration to be taken place, that, they weren't going to be my mini me's. And in many ways, they're not. I mean, they're just all over the place with their interests and passions. Most of them are musical, which I'm not. So it's been interesting to just give them a lot of experiences. I think that has been one of the key things that I attempted to do in mothering them, is to just put them in everything. They'll tell you I dragged them to all kinds of camps and classes, and to just try to figure out what stuck. For me, based on my personal experience, I spent 20 years in corporate finance, and I knew kind of from day one it wasn't something I was passionate about. I knew that it wasn't something that I was necessarily called to, and I mean, to some degree, I was playing to my gifts, but I knew I had more gifts in me that I wasn't really utilizing in my career. And so for me, it was really, really important to allow my kids to have the freedom to really explore and guide me, if you will, into where their interests were and their special talents and passions and interests.
When I hear that and I think of five kids, I feel like you could have easily just been running in so many different directions. you were a, corporate executive. How did you learn to manage your time with five thriving young men with some similar but still different um, goals and dreams and passions?
Yeah. Um, it was special. That's how I can, in one word to sum it up, it was special. I think that the key that I now, in retrospect, looking back, right? Because going through it, I was learning like everybody else, and I had a pretty steep learning curve because I had two toddlers when I brought my newborn twins home, and so literally I had, overnight, four kids that were under the age of four. And so there was, like I said, a steep learning curve and a lot of exhaustion and a lot of things that didn't go right. But I was just trying to survive. And so I think that the key for moms, really, as you're navigating this process, is to prioritize, to understand that your priorities have shifted and that your pursuits, the things that you're going after, need to align with those. Because I think there was a period in time where I was confused about my priorities. Like you said, I was in the corporate world, and having five children in the corporate world, first of all, that's not very common. Second of all, just managing that took a lot out of me emotionally, physically, mentally. And there was a point where I had to just look at my life and say, okay, listen, you're not going to be great at everything, not at the same time. And so you got to kind of decide, what is most
Hmm.
important to me, and let me allocate my energy, my time, my resources in a way that aligns with what's most important to me. And so that means that the things that are less important to you may not, they're not going to get that same intensity. They're not going to get that same commitment. And so although I was in the corporate arena for a long time, there was a point where I had to make a decision to say, okay, I'm not going to necessarily keep climbing up the corporate ladder, and that I would be okay with plateauing where I was, as long as I was able to keep the main thing, which was, my relationship with God, my marriage, and my kids.
But was that easy?
Oh my goodness, no. Far from it. I would say probably about halfway into my career, I really had sort of like an epiphany where it was like, this is not working. Like the way things are structured is not working. I'm coming home, I'm giving my kids and my family kind of the leftovers of myself. And that didn't sit well with me. And so at that point, I made some decisions in my career. I actually decided to start working part time, made some more commitments to my kids' education. And it was a challenge, it was an adjustment. And at times, emotionally and mentally, I really struggled with trying to manage all that until I really got to a place where I could streamline and say, okay, you got to accept that this little perfectionist thing you got going where you're excelling in every area, you got to let that go, right?
Mhm.
Because otherwise you're going to just be in a just compromised state. And I didn't want that. So it was a process. I mean, I love, just chugged along and learned as I went. And so what I'm sharing with you now is kind of being on the other side of it. But when I was going through it, I suffered from, depression and just anxiety, and just really struggled with trying to keep all the balls in the air. And that's when I knew that it was time for me to really reprioritize.
You talk about depression, anxiety. I'm thinking about just mental health and being a mom, right? Because we all have different mental health um, challenges at some point, right? That happens. Some are smaller in terms of today's society, and some can be more major. We can fall in deep depression, become suicidal. You talk about depression and anxiety. How did you walk through that? You've been married to your husband for 20 years, but you have kids, you have people depending on you, and as you were sharing, you were making the decision to give up something that you were doing at the time.
Yeah, it just thinking about it, I can get emotional about it because it was such a trying time in the sense of, again, just finding that equilibrium in the midst of five kids, career, my own individual aspirations as an entrepreneur. The first thing I did was I had to like come clean with my husband and say, listen, I'm not managing all of this. Like,
Hmm.
I know, sometimes we as women, we get out there and we make it look so easy. You put on the cute clothes and it's just like, wow, she's really doing it. Well, I had to get to the point where I had to be honest with, myself and with my husband and say, I'm not doing it. I'm really not doing well. Underneath all of this, I'm really falling apart. I'm trying to hold it together, but it's just not working. And so I did enter therapy, and that really was life changing for me in terms of helping me to be able to process through, okay, first of all, this is normal. Like, you've got five kids and a career and a husband and all these obligations. So the idea that you could successfully and easily manage those things was sort of unrealistic. So I had to gain a better perspective, okay,
Hmm.
on what was happening so that I could kind of be there for them. And, there were times where my kids saw me and I was in the bed and I couldn't get out and I was sad. And, you know, but I was always transparent with them. I did let them know, like, mommy's not doing well today, because I didn't want them to grow up with the idea that somehow mom was invincible and somehow mom didn't hurt as well and have challenges. Because I think a lot of times, we pedestalize, if you will, our parents in a way that, we think, they never have these challenges. And then as a child, you feel like you don't have a place to go with that because you're like, I'm over here isolated, struggling, and my mom's doing all this stuff. So I was transparent with them to a degree so that they did understand that mommy's got challenges too. Mom's not having a great day. And I think it was nice for them to be able to see me, walk through that. They know that I was in therapy. Again, I was transparent about all of that because if you think about it, even when they go to the doctor, there's going to be a form when they say, do you have a history of mental illness in your family? Well, if your parents never told you, you don't even know.
That's so
So,
true.
I don't want to deprive them of that information because that may be information that can be helpful to them in their journey.
Wow. I really enjoy that you were transparent with them, that and that is something that is so important for all the moms out there, not only with mental health but also with physical health. Tell your kids, more about their family history so that they know what's going on, because it is just so key, especially with many of the different diseases and different things that we have these days. When you know your history, it helps you. Um,
Absolutely.
to have those conversations with your provider. So you are really, really, I can, from what I've seen, you are an expert in the fact that over these 20 years, you have learned how to invest in yourself as a mom. Tell us a little bit about how you have invested in yourself and how that has helped you even through your depression.
Absolutely. Well, truthfully, I learned how to invest in myself because of the consequences of not investing in myself. Like, that's the truth of the matter. I saw what happens when I don't. I
Hmm.
can't bring my best self to the table as a wife, as a mom, as a sister, as a friend, if I don't first invest in myself and my needs. And so, again, kind of going back to what I was talking about earlier about knowing my priorities, that really helped me really sort of understand that I did not want my calendar to drive my priorities, but rather let my priorities drive my calendar. That was something that just
Hmm.
really resonated with me. And when I came to the
Yeah.
realization, I was like, okay, I got to make some changes because I don't want to be dragged around by my calendar. And so one of the key things that I started doing was making sure that I had a morning routine every day that involves me doing things that invest in myself. So it's, reading, meditating, listening to podcasts. I get up about an hour, hour and a half earlier than everybody else just so I can have some quiet time. Because once the first kid wakes up, or even my husband is up, it's a wrap. There's no more, there's no more silence. And so I realized that, silence was something that actually is refueling to me. And
Hmm.
so I had to learn that I need to give this to myself every day as much as I can. Um, I made sure I assess my mental health. That's one of the ways that I invest in myself. I have great awareness around where am I mentally, because if I don't have that awareness, you can't deal with what's not revealed. And so you
That's
really got
good.
to have awareness around what's going on. Am I feeling a little off today? Let me journal and try to figure out, what might be at the root of this so that I can address it. And I think the biggest thing that I didn't do that I wish I had was to have taken better advantage of the community around me. I didn't know how to ask for help. I had this idea in my mind that, good moms do it all. And I think, good moms don't do it all. Great moms definitely don't do it all. Um, you gotta know what you can delegate, what you can ask others for, and not see that as a weakness, but as a blessing and an opportunity to let somebody else in on your journey. So if I had to say, of all of those things, therapy is great. All those things are important, but if you don't have a solid community around you, build one. Reach out. I remember having these awkward conversations where, you're kind of trying to, you know um, find friends and see if you have things in common. It seemed kind of weird, but at the end of the day, those were my lifeline. So, community is key.
Wow. I've heard that from mothers in this series is that asking for help can be a challenge, because you want to be there, you want to be able to provide. Somewhere there's this mistruth that only you can provide what they need all the time. And so I just appreciate you sharing that. As we close, you're a coach, you're an entrepreneur. I just want to give you the floor to speak into the lives of the moms who are watching this, who are listening to this, who say, my life is out of control. I feel overwhelmed. I may be depressed and in bed as I'm listening to this. I just want to give you the floor to speak to them from all of your experiences.
Wow. Um, I would speak to that woman like I would speak to myself when I was at that point. And I would say, you know what? You're doing a great job. You're doing absolutely the best you can with what you have. And there's an but if there might be an opportunity for it to be even better, would you take it? And if the answer is yes, I would say consider tapping into the resources that are around you. Tap into your community, tap into, therapists, counselors, your church. Tap into those places where you can be fed, because we're so concerned about feeding our children and nurturing our children. But, like moms who may have breastfed, you need nutrients to be able to pass on to that child. And you cannot feed a child from a starved soul. And so your
Wow.
soul needs to be fed. And so take that time, get the help, make sure you communicate. If you have a spouse or you have a community around you, communicate your needs. Don't suffer in silence. Shine a light on what's going on, and in that, you will find the help that you need.
Wow. Wow. Well, we heard it from you directly. I am just I'm blown away. I appreciate you sharing, empowering. For the women and mothers who are listening who want to learn more about you, how can they follow you?
I would love to hear from any moms that are out there that are looking to shift from a busy life to a purposeful one, as a mom, as a woman, as a wife. You can reach me on my website at sparkherblaze.com. That's SPARK, herblaze, BLAZE.com. I'm also on Facebook at Spark Her Blaze. And yeah, that's where you can reach me. I would love to chat with you about how do you make that shift, because sometimes it's just easier to do it with somebody else that's already been there and understands.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much for joining us here at Chats with Chelsea and for being a part of our motherhood series. I was so thrilled to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast. Thank you so much.